I was sitting by the floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment, swirling a cup of chamomile tea, when my phone buzzed. The name flashing on the screen made my chest tighten, Mom. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Not really, but here she was, suddenly, like a shadow from a past I had tried to leave behind. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across my silk blouse, the one I wore when I wanted to look both approachable and untouchable. I ran a hand over the soft fabric, tasting the quiet satisfaction of a life I had built myself. And yet, why now? Why after all these years? A small laugh escaped me, ironic and brittle. I knew this call wouldn't be about love or apologies. It would be about their discomfort, their regret, maybe even their need to control me one last time. But I was no longer the scared 12-year-old left behind in foster care, while my brother went with Dad and my sister with Mom. I had survived. I had grown. The buzz came again, this time a text. "We need to see you. It's urgent." I closed my eyes for a moment, inhaling the aroma of tea and city air, and let memories swirl, sharp as glass and tender as old photographs. I had a choice: ignore them or finally confront the past. And I had spent long enough building a life in which I answered only to myself. But curiosity, that tiny ember, flared. I typed back a single word. Where? I remember the day everything changed like it was yesterday, though I was only 10. The morning sunlight had been harsh, cutting through the cracks of our tiny kitchen, illuminating the tension that always lurked there. Dad's voice was cold, clipped, almost unfamiliar as he told me that my brother, Ethan, would be coming with him. Mom, standing stiffly in the doorway, held my sister Lily close. And me? I was left behind, with a social worker's card and the uneasy promise of state care. My chest had tightened so hard I thought it would crack. I clutched my favorite stuffed rabbit, Henry, the one Mom had sewn for me on my 5th birthday, and for a second, the world felt like it had tilted. I didn't understand why love was rationed, why I was always the one left to prove I mattered. Ethan's hand waved at me, and he didn't cry, but I did. Lily tried to smile, but her small mouth trembled. I had never felt so small, so invisible. That first night alone in a foster home, I hugged Henry tighter than ever and let the tears fall. But I wasn't completely without hope. Mrs. Callahan, my new foster mother, was an older woman with kind eyes and a soft voice. She sat beside me on that stiff, unfamiliar bed and whispered, "You are stronger than the world knows, Lila. And one day, you'll show them all." Her words stuck like sunlight through rain. I held on to them, even as I bounced between homes, feeling the sting of rejection and the ache of being unwanted. Each goodbye, each moment of loneliness, sharpened something inside me, a quiet, burning determination. By the time I turned 12, I had learned how to navigate the system, how to advocate for myself, and how to survive. I knew that if I wanted a future worth having, I couldn't wait for anyone else to give it to me. I would have to build it from nothing, with courage, with persistence, and with the belief that one day I could rewrite my story. And in that belief, that fragile spark Mrs. Callahan had planted, I found the first taste of freedom. After leaving foster care at 18, I stepped into the world like someone testing a new pair of shoes. Awkward, uncertain, but determined to walk miles I had no choice but to conquer. I worked odd jobs at first, waitressing until midnight, stacking shelves in a grocery store, tutoring neighborhood kids. Every dollar I earned felt like a victory, a small defiance against the life I'd been handed. It was during a late night at the bookstore where I met Clara Donovan, a seasoned editor who ran a small but influential publishing house. She noticed the notebook I carried everywhere, pages filled with stories, reflections, and dreams scribbled in blue ink. "You have a voice," she said, examining my work. "Not many people are brave enough to let the world hear it." Her words, simple as they were, lit a fire. Under her mentorship, I began writing seriously short stories, articles, eventually a small book that sold modestly, but enough to prove I could support myself. Clara pushed me, challenged me, and sometimes scolded me for doubting myself. But she also believed in me when no one else had. The road wasn't easy. I lived in a tiny apartment where the heating barely worked, surviving on instant noodles and determination. Nights blurred into mornings as I typed under the flicker of a desk lamp, questioning every word, every paragraph. Self-doubt gnawed at me, and there were moments I wanted to give up and go back to safety, but I didn't. Slowly, the first wins came. My writing gained attention online. My freelance clients paid promptly, and I could finally afford a small, cozy apartment with sunlight and quiet corners for reflection. I never told my family. They didn't need to know. I wanted this success to be mine, untarnished by their expectations or pity. By my mid-20s, I had diversified, investing in a small publishing consultancy, attending industry events, networking with people who respected my talent, not my past. Every step felt secret, private, yet exhilarating. The girl who had once sat alone, clutching a stuffed rabbit in a foster home, had quietly built a life she controlled. I had learned to savor the little victories. The first client who trusted me with a big project, the first manuscript I sold outright, the day I saw my savings account hit a balance I had once thought impossible. Every moment reaffirmed that I could rise above the abandonment, the heartbreak, and the injustice. And through it all, Henry, the rabbit I never left behind, sat quietly on my shelf, a silent reminder that survival was only the beginning. That spark Mrs. Callahan had planted had grown into a blaze, and nothing, not even my family, could dim it. I didn't know whether to feel nervous or amused when the knock came on my office door. My heart remained calm, though my mind ticked like a clock counting down to the moment I had imagined for years. I had invited them, Dad, Mom, Ethan, and Lily, expecting that they would arrive with the same assumptions they always had, that I was struggling, alone, perhaps still fragile. Lila. Dad's voice was cautious, tinged with guilt, but also curiosity. Mom's eyes darted around, scanning my office, a mixture of disbelief and evaluation on her face. Ethan, tall and reserved, avoided my gaze, while Lily looked unsure, as if she didn't recognize the woman in front of her at all. I gestured to a sleek leather chair and said, calmly, "Please have a seat." My office was exactly as I wanted it to be, walls adorned with elegant artwork I had collected on my own, a white oak desk with neat stacks of manuscripts, and bookshelves lined with awards and certificates of achievement. Every corner reflected my journey, my victories, my independence. They sat, hesitating, the air thick with tension. I let them take it all in before I spoke. Their eyes flicked from the framed accolades to the modern sculpture on the side table, to the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I waited, savoring the pause, letting them feel the weight of their assumptions crumble. "I see a lot of questions on your faces," I said, voice calm but firm. "You've come thinking I was struggling, perhaps needing you, but the truth is—" I paused, letting the words settle. "I don't need anyone to fix me. I've built everything myself, my career, my home, my independence. I'm running my own publishing firm now, managing multiple projects, and my income allows me a life I once thought impossible." There was a stunned silence. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's lips pressed together. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, while Lily's hand subconsciously reached toward hers, a flicker of realization crossing her face. I continued, softer now, but with unshakable certainty. "The little girl who was left behind, she's still here, but she's stronger than you could have imagined. Every hardship, every lonely night, every rejection, I used them to rise. And here I am." They absorbed it slowly, disbelief painted across each of their faces. I could see the shame in Dad's eyes, the guilt in Mom's, and the amazement in Ethan's and Lily's. This wasn't the girl they had left behind. This wasn't someone to pity or underestimate. I leaned back, letting a calm authority settle over the room. "I don't resent you anymore, not fully. But I also don't need the past to dictate my present. I am exactly who I chose to be. And if you want a place in my life, it will be on terms I decide, not old patterns you tried to impose." For a moment, the only sound was the soft ticking of the office clock and the distant hum of the city below. I had them exactly where I wanted, facing the truth, silent, and powerless to dismiss the woman I had become. I watched them carefully, their eyes shifting nervously around my office. For the first time, I felt the power in our dynamic, the shift that had been years in the making. I spoke slowly, deliberately, letting every word land. "Here's the truth," I began. "I've built my life with nothing but determination, hard work, and belief in myself. If any of you want to be part of it now, you need to meet me halfway. I'm not asking for blind loyalty. I'm asking for accountability, honesty, and growth." I looked at Dad first. His shoulders were stiff, defensive, but his eyes carried a glimmer of something softer, remorse, maybe. "You need to acknowledge your absence in my life, take responsibility for it, and make genuine efforts to reconnect with Ethan, not just me. No shortcuts. No excuses." Mom's expression faltered next. "You need to let go of control," I said, "and start seeing Lily as a whole person, not just a reflection of your desires. You'll need to prove your support through actions, not apologies. You've had time. Now it's work, not words." Ethan, who had always been my protective older brother in small doses, shifted uncomfortably. "You've got to understand, I've lived in your shadow for too long," I said. "Now I'm asking you to step into your own life fully. Pursue your dreams, your career, your ambitions, not just the comfort of family assumptions." Lily's small hands tightened in her lap, eyes wary. "And you," I said softly, leaning forward slightly, "need to stop feeling guilty for my life. Focus on growing into the person you're meant to be. Let's stop replaying the past and start building the future, separately, then together if you earn it." I paused, letting the weight of each condition settle over them. My tone softened, but never wavered. Compassion mixed with firmness. "I care about each of you," I admitted, "but I will not let old patterns dictate my peace. If you want a place in my life, it will be on terms that honor growth, respect, and self-reliance." They absorbed it quietly, the room heavy with realization. I had drawn lines not out of revenge, but from survival. I had survived abandonment, rejection, and neglect, and now I was choosing the terms of my relationships. I noticed Dad's hands unclench, Mom's lips twitch with a tentative acknowledgement, Ethan's gaze steady, and Lily's posture begin to relax slightly. Small victories, I thought, almost silently smiling. They were listening. They were reflecting. They were learning, just as I had once learned under Mrs. Callahan's patient guidance. For the first time, I felt the full weight of my own authority, not the authority of wealth, or title, or status, but the authority of a woman who had reclaimed her life. I had been powerless once. Now every choice, every word, every boundary was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free, not from them, but because of the strength I had cultivated within myself. Weeks passed after that meeting, and change began quietly, subtly, in ways I hadn't dared hope for. Dad started calling Ethan not just for updates, but to talk about his dreams, his work, his life. Mom reached out to Lily with no hidden agenda, listening, supporting, encouraging her to chase goals she had long shelved for family expectations. Even Ethan and Lily began to grow, taking ownership of their own ambitions while respecting the space I had fought so hard to create. I watched these changes with a mixture of relief and pride. The people I had once seen as my betrayers were evolving, not because I forced them, but because the mirror I held up reflected a truth they couldn't ignore. Strength and accountability demanded action, not excuses. One evening, I sat in my living room, sunlight pooling across the hardwood floors, Henry the rabbit perched on the shelf above my desk. I ran my fingers over the small stitches, remembering Mrs. Callahan's words from all those years ago. "You are stronger than the world knows, and one day, you'll show them all." I smiled softly because I had. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in the quiet, unwavering way of a woman who had reclaimed her life from pieces and made it whole. I had faced abandonment, loneliness, and doubt, and emerged stronger, wiser, and fully in control. The family I once thought had left me behind was learning to meet me, not as the scared girl they once overlooked, but as the woman I had become. And in that recognition, There was hope, healing, and a fragile but real reconnection. I took a deep breath, the city air drifting through the open window, carrying with it the scent of possibilities. My past had shaped me, but it no longer confined me. My life, my choices, my boundaries, they were mine, and no one could take that away. And as I looked at my reflection in the glass, sunlight catching the curve of my jaw, I whispered to myself, steady and sure. I survived. I rose. And I will never be left behind again.